As our first panellists of the day take their places, just to recap really that the format will adapt. We'll have a quick chat and then we will open it up to the floor. Again, please raise your hand. There will be some roaming mics going around as well. The Slido platform, if you wish to ask a question via there, slido.com, or enter the hashtag Gov24 and submit your question. And also, I should just say as well, a question has come in the last few minutes asking why this isn't live streamed. What I can tell you is, well, I can't answer that actually, but what I can tell you is the sessions are being filmed, and I'm reliably informed they are going to be put online shortly after the event. So everybody on the panel, you need to smile for the next hour and 10 minutes or so. Thank you for your questions. I don't think the infrastructure minister is back yet, so we're going to press on. But if he does arrive back and wishes to join us, he's very welcome to. Let's just cut to the chase, ladies and gents. I'll start with you, Gary Cobb. You've talked about the current challenges facing the airport, and you've answered that in a way, what the current challenges are. So I've had a question in here. It basically says, we've heard a lot about challenges. We now want to know what's being done about it. I know you've alluded to that in part of your presentation, but how quickly can things move? Because obviously, it's you're not going to get air traffic controllers trained up and just like that.
No, so as mentioned before, so we have recruited 4 student TACCOs. The majority of those have been to college. I think one's past college. There's a couple at college now. One's doing their tower qualification. Once they've got their tickets, and it is a very hard course to pass, they will then go into their live training on the job. After going on to the job, they'll then have to pass a series of tests to then be signed off. It is unfortunately not very quick. A good example would probably be having a look at Gatwick. So last year, Gatwick had a few issues with air traffic control. They have gone out and recruited. They've seen issues this year. I would anticipate that they would see issues next year as well. It is 3 to 4 years, unfortunately, in order to get the training. We also have to keep the air traffic controllers. It probably is one of the few places that I've ever been where air traffic controllers are mocked publicly. We are trying to get these people to stay. It is very difficult. So again, the air traffic controllers that we have turn up every day. They extend wherever they possibly can. And to get mocked is quite difficult. They are likely to leave. We have seen some leave to go to other airports where they are literally greeted with open arms. So again, I think everybody has a part to play. We will play our part in terms of training them, in terms of getting them in terms of trying to expedite as quickly as we can. But I do ask the public to not put biscuits into their baskets. Whilst it is amusing, it professionally hurts them. I think it also mocking them, calling them out on Facebook does not help. We sometimes drive these people away. We desperately need to keep them. So when we have air traffic controllers, please be supportive. Please help them. And then I think it's 2 to 3 years, unfortunately, for some of the training to work.
Thank you. Let me ask another way. What is going to be done and in what time scale so we're not in a position where we're either having to close the airport early or have an extended break when there are aircraft in the skies trying to land?
So in terms of the closing time, our closing time is 8:45, unfortunately. So if we were to have a look at making it so that we could extend till 11 o'clock every day, we would need to change the structure of the airport. We would need more teams. At the moment, we can only make everybody contractual hours stretch until 8:45. After that, it is purely overtime. So in terms of getting people to work past their contracted hours, that's very difficult to do. So without quite significant investment in terms of probably the recruitment of another shift, that's unlikely to happen. In terms of the time to get air traffic controllers fully trained, as I've said, we are probably 2 years away. So the ab initios is the key to unlocking this, as I said. And again, having come back from college, we will have to wait 2 to 3 years, I think.
So without putting words in your mouth, and we'll go to some of the other panellists, is it going to be some time to come yet before the current situation eases?
Unfortunately, yes. So I think we will start to see some of the restrictions being lifted. In terms of the morning breaks, when we put the morning breaks in, we spoke to all of the airlines to work out what was best. in actual fact, there's very little traffic in those breaks. What unfortunately we do see is that aircrafts pick up their delays outside of the Isle of Man. Those delays then force them to land, unfortunately, at a time when we are closed. People sit there and say, can't you just stop on for another 10 minutes? That's not how air traffic control works. Their hours are mandated. So typically, if they're starting at 7 o'clock, they can do 90 minutes on the desk, and that is it. They then need to take 30 minutes break. If we were to sit there and start changing their break times ad hoc, depending on what was in the air, you would then start to see closures later on that were not programmed in, and that's when other airlines would then start to fall into it. So speaking to the airlines, the best way to do this is to be consistent and to tell them what's going on. In terms of our extensions, we communicate with the airlines probably about 4 weeks in advance when we cannot extend, and again, we will continue to do that. Sometimes it is disappointing when those flights don't come in. So EasyJet will typically not land an aircraft if they know that they are not going to depart. So again, we haven't closed before 8:45, and we are extending for the majority of the time.
I'll ask this, and I appreciate I'm putting you on the spot, Tim Johnson, because it's not your department, but you've just heard what's been said. Is that acceptable for the Isle of Man in 2024? 8:45 p.m, finito.
Well, I think reality is, I think Gary's explained it very well. That is the structure we have in place. I think we have to. I think what we have to do.
We never used to. So I think members of the public are probably wondering why it's got to this stage.
I'm sorry. The closing time of the airport, I think, for the last 15 years has been 8:45. 8:45 is the closing time that it's always been.
15 years.
For probably even longer. The airport will do extensions past 8:45 on best endeavours basis, but it has always been an 8:45 closure.
So has it been generally down to goodwill for the last 15, 20 years that flights have regularly, on a weekly basis, been arriving and departing after that time?
Yes, hence the reason why they do today. So we have flights arrive very regularly. As I think I said in my presentation, 75 out of 92 we have extended past 8:45. Unfortunately, with air traffic controllers, I think sometimes they just either A, get tired, or B, sometimes get frustrated with some of the
criticism, yeah. And this isn't an attack on air traffic controllers at all, but back to the question then, Minister, do you think that's an acceptable timescale in 2024 for the island?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer, I think, James. And bottom line, it is the reality of where we are at the moment, and I think that the message is that this is a really challenging time. If you look at the disruption there's been to the whole airline sector, I think we have to remember that, if you look at it, sort of post-war, 1950s, 60s, 70s, we've seen a huge growth in our this airline ecosystem, this global network. It is massive. It is complex. And all of a sudden, for the first time in decades, it stopped. It stopped. Everything stopped. You don't just turn a switch on and flick it, everything just goes back to normal again. There's been huge disruption, whether it's air traffic control, people retiring, supply lines, challenges across parts for aircraft production stopped, all the things that the knock-on effect, the damaged capacity. So we are where we are, James, and what I think the point we're making here is, as a government, as an airport, we're absolutely aware of the challenges. Are we trying to get on top of that? Absolutely. But there are certain areas that we don't have a huge amount of control on. There are no fast-track methods to training an ATC. You talked about over the last 15 years, and of course, there've always been late flights, but that has been exacerbated in recent times. I think we all know that it's the later Gatwick flight is often the challenge. Don't forget that aircraft's already done 2 routes probably to the Mediterranean that day. It picks up delays. Why is it picking up delays? Because there are air traffic challenges elsewhere, there are weather challenges. We also know, for example, that because of the Ukraine war, a lot of air traffic is now being pushed further west, so the routes are a lot more busier over France and Germany, other areas. That causes challenges. So these knock-on effects happen. So unfortunately, you get to the end of the day, and often the air crew's it's finished its flying hours and it can't come, or there's delays. So there are all sorts of complex challenges that we're all aware of. The point is what we're all talking about here, we're wanting to do, and the Annual Airport Board wants to do, is get the airport into a much more sustainable position, long-term confidence, and that's certainly what we're here to do from the DfE is concerned, recognising that connectivity is incredibly important to all of us. We know what the core routes are. We want to maintain and build those, and that's going to cost. It's costing us already, but that's a positive investment to ensure that we've got the connectivity that people in this room, in business, people outside, require and need.
We'll open it up to the floor in about 5-10 minutes. Chris Holliday, I just want to ask you, what is the role of the airport board, particularly regarding the future function and form of the airport, if I can put it that way?
Thanks. The airport board was formed and has been expanded about 8 or 9, 10 months ago by adding in some non-executive directors or advisors. So 3 of us, myself, Lorna and John McGlynn, have come in. And what we've been doing at the moment is, you can rest assured, we've already been pushing Gary and the team with a lot of the same questions that we've just been debating here about what can be done about punctuality and so on. So we're providing a lot of challenge to Gary and the team to see what can be done. We're also, in fairness, supporting a lot of the things from our experience that Gary and the team are saying into the government structure to really sort of say effectively, yes, that is how it is. There are no easy ways out of some of these things. Going forward, one of the things that the airport board has actually is very little decision-making power and delegated authority. So we can provide a lot of advice, but everything then flows onwards up into government in terms of decisions and money. And where we see things going in the future is a repositioning of the board and the airport structure somewhat to get a little bit further at arm's length with some more devolved decision-making, a longer-term financial picture built out from what Gary spoke about, deriving a master plan, looking at 5 to 10 years horizon of what needs to be spent in terms of the infrastructure of the airport, whether it makes sense to invest more in a bigger air traffic team, and all these types of judgment to get into a position where we're working with a longer horizon, because some of these things take years to deliver, whether it's air traffic change or even some of the infrastructure challenges. So we need to get a more nimble decision-making structure around the airport. And that's also true then to be able to respond to commercial opportunity, because there's certainly plenty of scope out there for us to do more with the airport land bank and the overall facility, that not just what the passenger sees, but the whole of the airport in entirety. There are plenty of people who want to do more things with hangarage and bringing aircraft to be based here in the island for their own purposes and so on. But we've got to be able to capitalise on that. If we do it all in the right way, we can then earn some more money, which then helps take some of the load off government in terms of funding some of the infrastructure.
Well, you mentioned about getting more business in. Hannah Lebeo, you've just mentioned the expansion of 4 new routes, I think, there. There are obviously plans to expand the destinations. I suppose my question following on from that is are we certain that we can actually serve those without there being further disruption to perhaps some of the other services we currently provide?
I think the important thing to note is when we talk to airlines about new routes, they generally work about 12 to 15 months in advance. So they're already working on what's going to happen in winter 2026 now. We do talk with them about our operational challenges, but because they work so far in advance with routes, those challenges we hope will be limited by that point.
Stu Peters, thank you for coming in at the 11th hour. As a DOI member, what are the long-term goals for the department for improving travel services?
Well, it's exactly that. We want to improve travel services. We've got to work within our means. So whilst it would be lovely to spend another £10 million a year at the airport to keep it open until midnight, we don't have the resources to do that. So the department is working very hard with the airport, with the ferry company to just try and squeeze the assets, if you like, and get the best possible service that we can. And
that's the only way to achieve that, I suppose, is it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I mean, it's a no-brainer. We want to do better. There seems to be a perception on social media, which Gary alluded to earlier on, that the government, the DOI in particular, can't wait to screw things up. And that really isn't the case. You've got an awful lot of people working in the DOI and at the airport and elsewhere who every day go into work to try and improve the service that we're providing to our customers.
Brian Thompson, what benefits do you believe do our islanders gain from having a nationalised sea service?
Well, I don't know. I think the Chief Minister earlier said it wasn't nationalised. So I think having that connectivity and to government, I'm on the visit board as well. working with different partners, working with the hotels, working with anyone who's putting on events. I think we are much more open than the steam packet previously was perceived as. So I think that's probably the biggest advantage. So we are aligned with government's strategies and policies for growing the population, growing the visitor economy. So we are working towards building those things as well.
Let's open it up. We have, can anybody want us to kick us off from the floor? Just raise your hand. Sue, I think is the first question. Vori, if we can bring the mic to her. I think there's a mic at both ends, so please don't be shy in raising your hand. Sue.
Okay, thank you. It's not so much a question, it's a statement, really. On behalf of the third sector, I want to thank the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company for everything you do for the community. But more importantly, personally, there's been a few times when I've faced some real challenges, and I just want to compliment the staff at the Steam Packet because they've been absolutely brilliant, and I think they come for unfair criticism on social media.
Thank you, I would agree. If I can just add on top of that, the frontline staff bear the brunt of the nonsense that's on social media. You know, they're probably trying to have a go at me or the chairman or somebody else or the board, but actually it's the frontline staff that feel it because they don't necessarily know why decisions are made. And I think it needs to stop, actually. And it's echo what Gary said about abusing air traffic controllers. The same goes for our staff. We've got zero tolerance on abuse as well. If you want to come on our boat and abuse our staff, you'll be banned from travel. You know, there's just no one comes to work every day to get abused.
I think the value of the steam packet was highlighted during the pandemic, and the amount of praise that the company and its employees received. We've got a few more hands here, Vori. I think Karen has a question to start with, and then if we can move to Rebecca in the middle. No, I didn't see you, sir. You go first. Sorry.
Okay. So, Peter Sherwood, I had one comment and two related suggestions. The comment is to thank Loganair for their morning flight, which allows one to get flights from Heathrow to North America. My suggestions are that, and that lends you to do it in one day, which is great, going out. And I did that last month. Although softball-sized hail in Calgary stopped the rest of the trip, but that's another story.
You can't blame us for that one.
No, exactly. Returning, most North American flights come in at around noon or 1 o'clock, and that's too short a time to get a flight to the island. So if there could be a later flight from the island, that would allow people to return from North America in 2 days, rather than the current 3 days of the hotel at Heathrow. And my second part to the suggestion is that Loganair, for example, has a partnership with British Airways. So therefore you could get a flight to North America, and if the flight from the Isle of Man is stopped by weather, you're not going to lose your ticket, they'll reaccommodate you. However, most airlines, that's not the case. So if you want to take advantage of these early morning flights to try and do it in a shorter time, or to come back with later flights, you're going to lose, you could potentially lose £800 to £1,000 in the ticket going to North America because you've missed the flight from the Isle of Man. And if the Isle of Man government thought about an insurance scheme whereby one could say, for example, I fly WestJet, that I paid so much to the government, and if I miss my flight, I'd be compensated. So it wouldn't actually cost the government anything if it was appropriately priced. But it would make it much more attractive to take these early morning flights or these late afternoon flights. And it would be good for the airlines, and it would be good for travel to the island and good for the economy.
Thank you, sir. Are there enough numbers, do you know? And again, I'm asking you, appreciate it's not your department here, Tim Johnston. Are there enough residents and visitors who are making those longer haul flights on a regular basis to make an agreement of that nature worth its salt and worth looking into?
I think what I would say to that is that obviously when it comes to scheduling, and it is very much down to the airline, that's their responsibility. It's not something that government or the airport would do really. But I think the broader point is right. I think that's where we as a department are sort of stepping into this as far as having this strategic view. Because I think in the past, I talked about the importance of having our core routes and supporting those. Without that support, as things stand today, we would have basically EasyJet going to Gatwick, there'll be no other London flights to City or Heathrow. There will be a flight to Dublin, and there will be very limited service probably to Manchester, and there wouldn't be a patient transfer. So government, we're already recognising the importance of investing and having those multiple routes. What I would say to that is it's really a case, and that's where we're coming in the sense that a lot of this work thought behind routes hasn't been done in the past, of understanding the value and where government can help in that. London City is a classic example where actually if you based it purely on yield, on the amount of people who use that flight, it wouldn't stack up.
No.
It's something like 30-something%. And you say, well, that's crazy. But then you look behind that and you talk to the businesses that are who use it, you talk to business and industry, and you realise that economically, actually, that's a really important route. And that gives then us the confidence to set out a more sustainable plan to make sure we retain that route. So I think it's, from my point of view, it's very much looking at these things and saying, actually, there are different reasons why different routes work. Some of it's for the visitor's economy, some of it's because of business. How do we make sure that we're supporting those routes? And how do we grow that and develop that so there's more choice for people? You mentioned Loganair, clearly incredibly important partner now. We've seen a big change in the whole regional airline infrastructure since COVID. A lot of the small airlines have fallen away. A lot of small airports have closed. Loganair's closest competitor is 5 times smaller. You know, that's the reality of the landscape we're in now. So having those good, open, healthy relationships with likes of EasyJet and Loganair working together, expanding choice route is absolutely key, and that's certainly what we're intending on doing and continuing.
Gary Cobb.
Yeah, and the only other bit worth mentioning is Loganair have quite a lot of co-chairs. So if Colin's in the room, so Colin, I'm going to ask you to probably list them all in a second if someone can get Colin over there who works for Loganair. But BA, Iberia, Qatar, Emirates, Colin will list the rest of it, KLM. So all of those you can book your ticket through and it will be treated as if it was flying with them. Also, if you have a luggage allowance with those airlines, you actually get that luggage allowance here with Loganair. And I don't know if someone wants to take the mic over to Colin, who can then literally list all of the other airlines that you can book flying through the Isle of Man.
Well, Colin's actually sent a question on Slido, but it seems to have disappeared on my screen. So I do want to go to Colin in a minute, but I think we've got a question. Where's Vori gone now? I did see it. Oh, no, we're moving on straight away. Let's go straight then. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Colin Grayley.
Well, good morning, everyone, and delighted to be here. And thank you for that segue into my moment of fame. But look, I did just mention it on the social media there that Loganair already have partnerships with I think it's something like 18 international carriers, and very much accessing those markets from the Isle of Man, principally over London Heathrow, over Manchester, and to a lesser extent possibly over Birmingham and London City. But the code-sharing routes and the interline routes that we have make it possible for people from the island, whether you're travelling for business or travelling to visit friends, relatives, or for leisure, and indeed for inbound coming to the Isle of Man to invest and visit the island, for one single ticket, which will cover your entire trip. You are totally protected. So if there is fog, if there's a technical issue, whatever, you will not have to pay 1 penny more, and that's not a subsidy that the government here has to make either. That is picked up through mutual agreement by the airlines, and our partners such as British Airways, United Airlines over to the US. I'm going to try and list them now. Emirates, Dubai and Worldwide, Etihad, Qatar Airways.
It's a great plug for Loganair, this, it really is.
and all these other airlines, and Singapore Airlines. We also work in partnership with the likes of KLM and Air France. And as much as you may not all be going via Amsterdam, such as the nature of the aviation business and travel business, if you're travelling on a KLM co-chair flight, for example, from Heathrow, and it's actually operated by Delta or Virgin Atlantic, you can book a KL flight number from the Isle of Man to London Heathrow, fly with Loganair, and then onwards with Virgin Atlantic to Los Angeles, and you have that through connectivity. So the options are absolutely massive. There are other carriers, Iceland Air, for example, Finnair, that we also work with. So it's a very, very wide-ranging number of flight connections that you can possibly get over Heathrow. The alternative to that is that you do something called self-assist in terms of transferring, and you would not have through bag checks. And if something does go wrong, you're picking up the cost. So yeah, our plug is very much please continue your support for Loganair, and we'll continue supporting the Isle of Man.
Thank you for your contribution. Thank you.
And I suppose the only other point that I'd probably better make is that, so with Aer Lingus as well, so Aer Lingus is part of IAG. If you use Aer Lingus Emerald, they will do something similar.
Thank you. Rebecca George.
Thank you. Can the panel please comment on the impact of APD, airport passenger duty, and in terms of commitment from budget airlines? Thank you.
That's, well, Gary's an obvious place to start. We'll move along the line, though.
So,
apart from you, Brian.
So APD, air passenger duty, is the levy that the Isle of Man government places on departing passengers. Our conversations with EasyJet is that is one of the key reasons why they have dropped Bristol and Belfast in particular, Bristol for a seasonal route. So we can only go off on what they tell us, but again, that is a big impact. However, APD does generate income for Treasury, so there is a cost to any form of tweaking with APD that would be a cost that Treasury would have to pick up. But EasyJet in particular, although I think Loganair and Emerald are all in agreement that APD decreases connectivity. The level of APD that you see on the Isle of Man, so Jersey, Guernsey have zero rated it, and the UK have halved it. So we are probably the highest in terms of the British Isles, but it does generate some revenue to Treasury, which again, Treasury will use for other activities, some of which may be related to aviation.
Hannah or Chris, have you got a thought on that?
I haven't got a lot to add. In the end, what the passenger sees is the total fare when they're being asked to book, and the APD line is buried in there. But if it's in there at £13, it gives you a different answer than if it's in there at 6 or 7. So there is clearly some sort of impact. But as Gary says, it's actually a part of financing going into government here, and it's a part of a bigger picture then of how everything else gets financed through back into the transport infrastructure, the airport and so on. So you have to look at it somewhat in the round, but from an airline point of view, if you put the airline hat on, then you'd love it not to be there.
Tim Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that last comment. I think that, in an ideal world, love to get rid of APD. Bottom line is, as an island, we all know that our public services are a net cost, whether it's the buses, whether it's Heritage Rail, and the airport's the same. It costs us around about £6 million a year, net costs to the taxpayer to run the airport. APD maybe reduces that to 3 or 4 million. So bottom line is, we take it out, it has to be found elsewhere. So in an ideal world, yes, but I think it has to be part of that longer term plan for the airport. We talk about looking at the airport in a different model, going forward, looking at the estate, where else it can earn, and look at that bigger picture. And if part of that bigger process, including what we do in enterprise and looking at routes and seeing how we can make, say, some routes more sustainable through the visit agency and other areas, then of course you can look at that as part of that bigger package. But as things stand now, that is the situation.
I did see another hand go up. Yes, the gentleman in the right in the middle there of the room. If you can stand up, sir, because I don't think they can see you at the moment. Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much indeed. The floor is yours.
Right, thank you. Just first of all, a comment. The panel seems to be very defensive regarding criticism. I get that impression. Criticism is part of the job, really, when you're providing a vital transportation link for the Isle of Man. That's just a point of comment. The second thing is a question. I get the impression that Steam Packet does not offer the online booking service, offer last-minute fares at reduced costs. at reduced prices. So, for example, if you book last minute, the price is a lot higher, even though the boat is not full. So maybe that's an option you could look into, is having last minute fares at maybe half price.
Well, you've timed that to perfection, sir, because there was actually an announcement yesterday afternoon. Brian Thompson?
Yeah, that's literally yesterday's news. That's exactly what we announced yesterday. It won't always be perfect, because on busy sailings the fare will still be high last minute, because we've still got dynamic pricing, if we're allowed to use that expression. But in general, if there is a boat that's empty, the fare will be much reduced. So that we're doing that. So it was announced yesterday. It's been all over social media as well. Although I think most people are more excited about going to Ibiza in the summer.
I don't know if you are, Brian, but Charlie's asked, why are the offer prices on the steam packet restricted to 5-day returns? Don't we want people to come to the island for longer?
That's a historic thing that we're looking at as well. I've sort of tasked the team with doing more, working with partners, as I've said, and any packages we can put together, we're open-minded about that as well. But what we have to remember is that people need to come to us with their plans as well, not post them on social media. They need to come and speak to us, and then we can help them and we can work together.
Yeah. Well, I've got you, Brian. We'll have a Brian Fest for a moment or two. Why is the steam packet supporting overseas theatre productions with their latest fare deal? It would be fantastic if they offered a similar deal to support local theatre. Is that...
That's a brilliant question. Somebody asked me that at the weekend, and I would say just what I've said a minute ago. Why have they not come and spoke to us? We'd have been more than happy to do that. But again, loads of events are happening on island, and it's almost like they don't want an overseas audience, so they don't come and speak to us. We'd be more than happy to put packages together for any event that's happening on island.
This question, I'll start with you, Brian, but I appreciate it's more DOI as well. It says, in relation to the sea terminal, what improvements are planned to improve the facility for passengers and freight? Cruise ship ferry passengers are left, this poster says, are left going through security. A bottleneck can be embarrassing at times and a poor experience. Views on that? Is that something you're aware of?
I think in general I would agree that I think the sea terminal in Douglas needs to be improved. I think there's a bit of pressure on that because of Liverpool, and also Hisham's been done up as well, if anyone's travelled through there as a foot passenger recently. So yeah, I think there's improvement needed.
Stu, if I can put that to you as well, if you, what improvements are you aware of any improvements to improve the passenger facilities?
I'm going to plead the fifth on this one, James, because actually I'm most involved in things with wheels and engines or wings, and I don't know anything about boats, so I'm not really involved in that.
No, sure. Well, it's a pity that for understandable reasons that the minister can't be here today. Let us, gentlemen at the front here. We'll come back to you, Kieran, as well. I can see three in a row. Yes, sir.
Oh, so I stand?
Please, if you would.
Thank you. Well, really good to hear that we can have a conversation with Brian. I have a show opening in Liverpool, and I've asked the producers, can't we have it at the Gaiety? So I'd love to have a conversation about how we can put a package together for that. But I'm interested in, on the steam packet, using the facility, particularly of the video screens, to actually say more about the island that visitors are coming to. You get hours of the news from the UK. Why can't we, and we'll help you, we're in the film industry, put together a package that has Manx language in it, shows many of the things that you could do as you arrive on the island, because you have an audience there for 2 or 3 hours that could pick up something, get off that boat. Even locals, as a new person to the island, there's lots I don't know about the island. I could find that out as I sit on the steam packet and look at the screen. Oh, so that's happening in Ramsey. Maybe I'll go to that.
Yeah, that's that's a great comment, and actually a good thing for me to talk about as well. So you're talking about on the Manannan, I guess. Remember I said the Manannan's 26 years old. The technology on there as well isn't as advanced as it is on the Manxman, because what you're suggesting we're actually doing on the Manxman, and we're looking at that going both ways. So advertising going to Liverpool, what you can do in Liverpool, advertising when you're coming to Ireland, what you can do on Ireland. And again, the Manannan's future's looking, unpredictable is probably what I would say. So do we invest and bring the technology up to speed to do what you've suggested on there, or do we wait for the next vessel and do it on there? But it's a good suggestion, and I think it's one that I'll throw back at my team who can deliver it. Thank you.
Super, thank you. Yes, Kieran, and then we'll come to the front here as well.
Hello, I'm Kieran, and thank you for that introduction. Guys, just to context, I've had some spectacular experiences with customer service on the ferry and at the airports, and unbelievable, and to the point where now I expect that when I get on there, because that seems to be the norm. I run a business which has people, and it has the sea to very unpredictable elements, and can produce all sorts of finery along the way. So I do appreciate very much what all those businesses go through. Now, you're talking a bit about the air traffic controllers and how they feel that they're under the spotlight and criticism. And I've never had any that I don't speak to the air traffic controller when I'm in the plane, but I certainly have the stewardesses or I have the staff on board. And at every single opportunity, they are enthusiastic, they're engaging, they're highly motivated. I want to know what it is that you're doing, because the public they might feel like they're against them at times. So what are you doing in terms of that to keep those people highly engaged? And is there some lesson we can learn, perhaps even with the air traffic controllers, to make that pass over to them so that they feel valued and they feel that they enjoy their working environment? I'm hoping there's something there.
Hannah Labea, first of all.
Thank you very much for that feedback. We have to remember at the airport, and I don't know if it's the same at the steam packet actually, that the staff are actually not all airport employed staff. Some of them are Menzies handling agent, there's different catering companies, there's a lot of third-party operators too. And I think the most important thing that we try to do as an airport, and we don't get it right all the time as well, is to communicate and work together. So we have regular meetings. Every morning, the operational team get together to talk about what the challenges might be for the day for each single area and how we can support each other. Because at the end of the day, we are a small airport, and if we do work at different companies, it doesn't mean to say that we can't support each other. Gary's worked on security before in some elements when we've not had enough staff to do it. We've all done different bits and pieces to support. Also, a lot of the team are homegrown that work in senior management. So I've actually done the jobs before. For example, I've been a check-in agent early in my career. I've been a flight attendant early in my career too. So we can really empathise with the team and understand what their challenges are as well. But like I say, we don't always get it right.
Have you got a happy camp, Brian Thompson?
I think our recent challenges are well documented, and I think it's a sort of compliment to the guys working on board that we've got over them pretty quickly, much quicker than I even thought. So that's good. The other thing, we're on a bit of a start of our ESG journey as well, if we can bring that up now. And part of that is going to be a bit of staff welfare and looking after people and valuing our people and making them feel valued. So we're kind of probably behind the curve on that. A lot of companies on Ireland are already progressing, but I suppose we can sort of skirt along on their coattails and learn lessons from them as well. So certainly for me, I don't like to come to work every day looking miserable. I like to have a good time, and I like to make sure that the team around me are enjoying what they're doing. Yeah, there's challenges, but those are that's why we come to work. That's why we're in the roles we're in, is to face those challenges and try and come up with solutions.
Thanks for your question, Kieran. We have a question here, gentleman just there with his hand up, Colin. I think the lady's behind you now. She's come in and gone out again. Thank you.
Obviously, the role of airport director is vital for the Isle of Man's future. Unfortunately, Gary is leaving, so he won't be driving the changes forward. I was just wondering how far we've got with appointing, how far down the line we are with appointing his successor.
Do you know, actually, Gary, are you involved in that process at some stage?
So not involved in the process per se, as you would expect, departing, but the plan will be to have an interim to cover me for a period of time. So not commonly known, I do hear it sometimes over why do you need an airport director? Within aviation, actually the role of accountable manager is actually the most important role in an airport. You have to have an accountable manager. So my number 2 will be the accountable manager going forward, and we will have an interim airport director. I think interviews for that happened last week, so I would expect probably some new, and we have a board meeting I think next week, so I would anticipate some news on that potentially coming quite quickly. How public to make that, again, this can be quite a tough role in terms of the public eye. So again, I would just ask that everybody gets behind whoever gets that interim role. And then permanent recruitment, I think, will go out at some point late September, October. In terms of getting someone there, you're probably talking 6 months by the time all the recruitment process is gone, and then a minimum of 3 months notice, if not longer. So very, very imminent for interim, and then probably well into next year when my permanent successor is appointed.
And for obviously, I'm not sure they're very good personal reasons. You haven't stayed in post here that long, so are you hopeful and confident that it can be a smooth transition when you do depart?
Yeah, so I think quite a lot of changes happened at the airport. We have a very good team. A lot of people look at the airport director. Actually, I'm very lucky. I have a really, really good team, be that my management team, be that all the way down to fire, ATC. I think you have some very, very good people at that airport who make it work with very little money and quite a lot of challenges. So I'm not too worried that it's not going to continue. In terms of getting expertise, I think we're in a far better place than we were 2 years ago, both in terms of regulatory position, both in terms of some of the cultural issues that we had. So I'm hoping that it would be far, far easier this time than it was when I took over.
Just to expand on that, Chris Holliday?
Yeah, as Gary said, the process of finding an interim director is well underway. We do have an airport board meeting next week, and we have a session after that to then look at the recruitment spec for the permanent position, and that will then go forward into recruitment. Certainly, Lorna and I, elsewhere in our other roles, have been through a CEO recruitment for an airport group recently, so we've got a good perception of what the likely market response is going to be and how to go about doing that. And as Gary says, it is going to take some time to find the right person and slot them into the job, because these people are generally doing other things and you have to attract them into the role. But it is underway, it will be fully covered out, and we're sure we'll be able to find some good candidates.
Thank you, thanks Colin. We've got 2 questions on this table, and we've got 2 on the far side. Yes, the lady in the gentleman first. No, you know what? Ladies first.
Sort of 2 out-of-the-box questions, one for either side of the platform. In Newfoundland, the dairy farmers noticed that the refrigerated containers were going back empty on the ferry. And they got together and they cut a deal with the ferry and the owners of the containers to get their ice cream shipped off Newfoundland much more cheaply. And they became one of the biggest ice cream producers in Canada because they were able to get what they produced off the island at a reasonable rate. I just wonder if something like that could happen here, because there must be lots of containers going off empty. And for the airport, is there any way that you could split the shifts so you have a morning shift and later shift? Because people need to get off the island early. They need to go to appointments in Liverpool. They need to have business meetings in London. They need to make international connections. They need to get back late after their appointments at the end of the day, coming back in from other countries and from their meetings in London. We don't really need that capacity in the middle of the day, to my perception. So is there any possibility of either of those things happening?
Brian Thompson, can the steam packet schedule be altered sufficiently?
I don't know about altering the schedule, but certainly the trailer sharing, not just refrigerated, is something we support. But again, I keep saying this in every interview, no one's approached us with these things. I don't know where it's dying, where it's fallen off, but it certainly hasn't got as far as me. I think it's a great idea. It's something we'd support. I've already talked about the suppliers we work with. Some of them are exporting as well. More than happy to speak to them.
Gary, Cobb, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, so we do have 2 shifts on. Part of the issue you see, so a lot of people sit there and say, well, why have you got a morning break or two morning breaks? The reason why you have the morning breaks is that we actually have to have 2 air traffic controllers on. So the positions that an air traffic control here, so a lot of people sit there and go, oh, London Gatwick, how many ATCOs do they need? In London Gatwick, all of the approach services, so that's basically bringing the aircraft down to the ILS, are done nationally by NATS. Here we have to do both approach and tower, so we have 2 air traffic controllers in the tower. After 90 minutes, they need their break, so you'll have to have a third person who then stags them off. unfortunately, after that, you'll have a period of time where they've started work. They can't really do split shifts like you can in hospitality. That will induce fatigue. So we do have 2 shifts. They do typically work longer than that. The issue that you start to get to then is you're going into the night, which again puts in quite a whole different level of fatigue management and the rules around that. So the hours that an air traffic controller work are really, really strict, but even down to the number of hours they do in a day, the time between their shifts, how long they can go without being a break. And as I said, so typically most of our ATCOs that start in the morning will start at 7, they'll do 90 minutes, and it has to be 90 minutes, then they'll take 30 minutes, then they'll do 90 minutes, 30 minutes, and I think they can potentially go to 2 hours and 30 minutes. So their breaks are mandated when they take those breaks. We can't sit there and say, oh, we can work 10 minutes longer. And a lot of people sit there and go, oh, I can work 10 minutes longer. And don't get me wrong, guys, I can work 10 minutes longer if it's very rare that I get a break. But do you really want an air traffic controller being tired? There is a reason why aviation is the safest mode of travel in the world, and the reason why that is the rules are very, very strict. Those rules are strict for a reason. They keep people safe. So whilst it does cause quite a lot of frustration, I would much rather keep everybody safe than get tired air traffic controllers that unfortunately bring accidents in.
Tim Johnson.
Just going back to from a sort of freight side and steam packet side, I suppose, is just to mention, of course, that there is a committee at the moment sitting as looking at the whole sea services and plan. And as a department, we put a submission into that. And certainly the recognition, absolutely, that, as the Chief Minister alluded to this morning, we don't want to get in a situation where we're having to subsidise directly the steam packet. It's important that organisation can return a profit and it can invest in new vessels and it can move forward. But that recognition that there's a balance between that sort of socio-economic balance rather than a profit maximisation balance, I think is key, and recognising how we value the importance to the economy of affordable sea services. And obviously that includes export and freight. And certainly from a personal point of view, from a farming point of view, that route to market and the cost of getting produce off the island, when we've got a big challenge for the farming sector and its scale and economies of scale, it being able to get product off island is really important. As Brian says, his door's open for conversations, and I think, to be fair, there's probably been a lack of communication in the past, of misunderstandings on that, and that's not Brian's issue, not Brian's fault. But going forward, we need to have that broader conversation and make sure we are getting that balance right.
I think Brian's so keen. Actually, Brian, we'll probably give out your phone number at the end if you. No, I'm teasing. I'll just tell me, just while on air traffic controllers, we will come to you, sir. Just a question's come in. I just want to mix and match between Slido and the floor. Are air traffic control trainees tied in contractually to stay on island once their training's been paid for and completed?
Yes, so we charge our air traffic controllers a bond. So air traffic controlling training, we will typically spend probably in the region of about £100,000 training an air traffic controller from scratch all the way through. Unfortunately, though, what you typically find is that it's a very hard course to pass. So you'll spend £100,000 and not everybody passes it. A lot of airports are now looking at people with bonds and going, well, I can spend £100,000 and I know that person's passed. So bonds are being sold. So whilst you've got a bond and they have to pay the £100,000 if they leave, there is such desperation in the market that people will pay those bonds on their behalf. Because it's like if someone came to me and said, look, Gary, you can spend £100,000 and they've got a 60, 70% chance of passing, or you can spend £100,000 and you know that they've passed. I'd spend the £100,000 knowing that I've got a definite pass. And unfortunately, that is the market that we are sitting in, particularly with the Middle East attracting as many air traffic controllers as they are.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman next to the lady who asked the previous question.
Sorry, can I hold it? Sorry. Just coming back to the point about the steam packet with its listening to the customer, I think it's really important going forward that the steam packet do more. I don't think it's good enough to say that nobody's approached me. The fact that let's call it the government is the major shareholder of the steam packet now, right? And it's important to keep it the politicians out. But the only way you're going to keep the politicians from interfering is actually coming up with solutions. And just sort of simply saying that nobody's approached me, A, it's disingenuous, and B, after watching the farmers documentary recently, who clearly stated that they had approached the steam packet to find solutions, that's not correct. So I think it's really on the steam packets. It's on the onus on the steam packet as a community shipping company that needs to make a profit to come up with solutions that benefits the Isle of Man. Let's say manufacturers. I mean, I suppose many manufacturers are frustrated that they can't actually export off the Isle of Man due to the cost. And we know the Isle of Man is an extremely costly route, and that's just not good enough. And I think the steam packet has to come up with solutions. If you don't come up with solutions, politicians will continuously have to step in. And you're the experts. You come up with solutions. You know where there's margins and there's merits and there's gaps where you can actually offer better freight costs to, let's say, exporters such as Isle of Man creameries, to name one. More needs to be done there, and it's not good enough just to say nobody's approached me, because I think a lot of people have, Brian, to tell you the truth.
Fair comment, Brian?
No, not at all. I can guarantee that nobody has approached me. There's historic things that have happened where people have approached a company previously and they've put together packages. In fact, I passed one on to the Enterprise Minister recently about what the cost would be for exporting some farming goods. So there is things happening, but no one has approached me. That is not disingenuous. That's a fact. So I would open my door to anyone who wants to come and talk about exporting products. But what's happening is they're speaking to someone else. They want to go and speak to government or speak to their friends or post it on social media. My door is open. They need to come and speak to me and my team, and we will see what we can do for them, and we'll work together. But it's no up to me to go and tell somebody how to export their product.
I don't know if Ju and Ivori are around. Ivori is certainly. If we can make our way to this table, because I know they've been waiting quite a while, and then I'll come to you at the back, Ju. And just want to ask you on that. Thank you for joining us, Minister Crookall, by the way, appreciated, and not intentionally throwing you under the bus with the first question here, but there was reference there to that recent Manx News 25-30-minute documentary about travel and interviews with Brian and Manx National Farmers Union and lots of other bodies. Treasury declined to take part. I just want to ask both Tims as ministers what message that gives out. Are you aware of this are you aware of this production?
I'm not. Can I just start, first of all, by apologising? I had to go to a funeral very late, organised, so apologies for that. And thank you to Stu for stepping in very last minute. Thank you very much, and I hope he hasn't promised too much to you all. No. Again, I'm not sure. I'm not aware.
You're not aware of that.
So I don't know whether
are you Tim
not,
Johnston? So. No, well, we'll come to that. We've got a chat with the Treasury Minister tomorrow on other issues, but we'll raise that then. Okay, let's... yes, Alwyn Collister.
Yes, I've got two questions regarding the steam packet and the airport. First of all, Minister, the new building in Liverpool is very good, and I think it's a great improvement for what we have. But the sea terminal now is getting very dilapidated, and I wondered whether in the future have you got any plans to put 2 escalators in that building to save people tramping up all the stairs and back down again the other side. The lift is not adequate. It can go down a step ladder quicker than go down the lift, because more and more people are now coming on the Manxman. You can have 200 or 300 walking passengers off the Manxman. To trail up from one pier to the other is not correct. It's time it was improved. Have you any plans for anything like that?
We're talking about improvements to the local terminal
Here
facilities.
at Douglas, yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
and you're quite right. You know, the time it takes at the moment to do that, and it's not good. There isn't any plans at the moment to do that. We're looking. We've been talking, I suppose, for the last 2 or 3 years about the plan for the whole of the Douglas Harbour scheme that has now been reviewed, or being reviewed, should I say? But again, we have to consider, the amount of cost in there, and is there a better way of doing it? We all know that there's talks about Lord Street, Parade Street, and at some stage, maybe even down where the sea terminal is now. Is that all go? So we have to cost in or look at the cost of that and whether it's going to be money that will be spent and then changed again later. But I absolutely take on board what you're saying about access and egress, if you like, to and from the boats for pedestrians.
And I think you had a question about the airport as well?
Yes. I know we've got restricted hours at the moment, but I've sat at the airport till 11:45 waiting for Dan Air. None of you here will probably remember that, but Dan Air would come in at 11:45 on a regular time, and the airport was always open. One or two things that could improve the airport. We had a very, very congested front of the airport building. Somebody decided no car parking, which are no stopping, but unfortunately, common sense prevailed and it was stopped. What we do need in front of the airport is an extra road. I know that might sound strange, but an extra road, because you can't park very easily without stopping the whole traffic. And the only answer to that is an extra road. Maybe take part of the garden away, and maybe then disabled parking should be in front, much nearer for people to get to. The other thing is the pier that you walk out to aircraft. It's got a drafty place at the very bottom where water comes in and people leave the island with wet feet. That is not a very good idea. And that needs to be looked at very soon. It wouldn't cost a lot to fill the bottom panels in. You gave a lot of praise to Logan Air. Logan Air are helping us out. It's not the best aircraft for the Isle of Man. It won't cope with stormy weather. We lost the Q400, which was a big mistake. The other thing is, I can't remember when the airport ever closed completely, but except for runway repairs. But these are only little things, but they give a big impression to people going in and out of the airport. EasyJet, well, EasyJet, they're having a bad month. They've changed their time of coming in. And I often look at EasyJet and I wonder, whoever is doing the planning, have they any common sense? Because we have no trains we can get from London. If you miss or your plane is cancelled, you might wait 2 days before you can get a free seat. That certainly needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Food for thought. Owen Collister, thank you very, very much. There is a question with you at the back, Ewan, but I just want to mention one to you, Gary Cobb. When will a mail plane be reinstated as post and deliveries have gone backwards since it was lost? And I'm sure that's something the majority in this room will agree with. It's not in your gift, I know. Yes. But I'm going to ask the question anyway.
So I think that's a Royal Mail question. I think the Royal Mail plane was run by Royal Mail, not even the Isle of Man Post. As far as I'm aware, that's been cancelled, and I'm not aware of anything where that's coming back. So.
I'll pass that on to Tim Johnston as well, if I may.
Yeah, that's right. The Mail plane was run by the UK Post Office. That it was their decision to withdraw that service. Unfortunately, the island, we don't have any control over that one.
Okay, Ewan, far side. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm John Pickles. I'm a regular user of the steam packet, particularly between Douglas and Heysham. First off, I'd like to commend the long-serving staff that you have and the ones that have unfortunately left, right? A couple of the comments you made, Brian, in the presentation, I disagree with. Perhaps we could have a 20-minute session afterwards. The question I have for you is, we've spent a lot of money on a new boat here, and how much are you putting aside for maintenance of such a prestigious facility? There are issues I pointed out to staff when it first went in, which while it's under warranty, actually need sorting. They still haven't been sorted. And they're dead simple things. And as far as the food is concerned, the food, I'd rate it now 2 out of 10 as compared to 9 out of 10 as it was on the Ben McCree. Main issue with that is it's cold. right? If you don't get to the counter in the first 5-10 minutes, it's cold, right? And
You've clearly not had the macaroni cheese, sir. I was there a week ago and it was delicious. But Brian, just to reply to those first two
I'd
points,
say
and
I'm a
then we'll come back to you
regular
with another two. Brian.
Yeah, but the issue is on maintenance, right? Your chefs and that, I watch what actually goes on. They're spending a hell of a lot of time. It's a bigger boat, cleaning up and things, than actually doing the actual food and things, right? There's issues with the actual key things. And I don't want to go into great detail, but as I say, I'm a regular user. I know what goes on. I've actually defended the steam packet when people have come on and said it's always late, particularly a guy from London, right? And I've actually backed up members of staff when they've had rude customers, right, and saying, what are you comparing it with? So basically, I'm all for the steam packet. What you've actually said is no one's approached you. That gives to me that people don't want to approach you, Brian, right? So social media, I don't do social media. I don't believe in it, yeah? So I say 20-minute session afterwards and I can reveal some things to you, okay? But my question at this point in time is maintenance. So if in 12 months' time your new boat is falling apart, what are you going to do about it?
We'll let Brian answer certainly some of those. Thank you for your questions, sir. Thank you. Brian Thompson.
I don't know where you get the boat's going to fall apart. There is a maintenance programme, there's continuous maintenance, the crew do maintenance. So it's going to dry dock in the next couple of weeks. So I'm not quite sure where you're going with that. As with regard to the foods, everybody's entitled to their opinion. James has got a different one. But I'm more than happy to talk to you. And actually, my customer service manager's lurking somewhere in the crowd. So both of you, I'll speak to you and answer your concerns. No problem.
We're down to the last 10 minutes on this, so what I'm going to ask the panel respectfully, if we can keep the answers quite succinct, because I just want to throw a few out. Infrastructure Minister Tim Crookall, bus cancellations weekend before last. What was the main reasoning behind it? We keep hearing staff shortages, but what was the reason behind the reason?
It basically was shortage of staff. So when there's a shortage of staff, there's an overtime list goes up, and those that are on the older terms and conditions get first dibs at that, if you like, and it's there for them to look at. And if they don't want it, then it goes out to everybody else. And it was a Friday and Saturday. It was really hot weather as well, so it was probably just an amalgamation of it, and I'll call them excuses, if you like, for why people didn't want to come in. And it looked like it was planned to some people, but it certainly wasn't, as far as I know, and I've asked the question, and those people did not want to come in and do overtime that weekend.
But what was
I'd like to apologise, actually, for and I call it an excuse, the reasoning that went out was, it was not good enough. We should have just said it was staff shortages. It looked like we were trying to cover up something, and that certainly wasn't the case. But we need to be more upfront when we've got a problem in just, telling people sooner, even before I get to be told. I wasn't told until a lot later on, after it occurred. But we need to tell people sooner rather than later, not just on social media, probably through the radio stations as well, that we've got an issue and we're trying to work it out. Over 200 calls were made on Saturday morning from my staff, from the department staff, to officers, to bus drivers, trying to get them out there to work. And, we couldn't get the staff in. So they obviously all just had their reasons. But
it was glorious Saturday. But can this be avoided again? Because the underlying reason was the two-tier contracts. There were some staff on older contracts, there was some staff on new, and there's quite a disparity between them, would you agree?
Well, nothing has changed since 2 weeks ago, so it could absolutely happen again, and it happened a few years ago, as people remember. And until we change things, but at the end of the day, if people have done their 40 hours a week and they don't want to work that weekend because it's a lovely weekend, want to be with their family, we can't stop that. And it might have just been that. I really don't know. It might have just been that reason.
If this becomes a not irregular occurrence, would the contracts need to be looked at again to make them closer to what they are? Because at the moment there's a differential, quite a differential in some cases.
I would honestly say it will take longer to sort out terms and conditions rather than look at the shifts. And we would have to look at the shifts and the routes that we're running to make that work. And so people know that the bus is going to turn up. So we've got enough drivers to deliver those routes, if you like.
Thank you very much. Question for Gary or Hannah. On the airline statistics slide, an attendee's just seeking clarification, really, to whether it covered the like-for-like period, 23 to 24, Jan to July in both years, or was 23 a full year against 24 thus far, if you like?
No, it's a very good question, and they were identical year-on-year numbers with that. The one at the bottom with the on-time performance that's gone up to 90, that does include late inbound aircraft, which is a commonly known thing at a code that the airports use. So late inbound aircraft is when we as an airport can't do anything about that delay. It's come in late. So that last one, if you see the slides again, was that, but all the rest included late inbound aircraft.
Is there a couple of questions have come in, a very similar theme, concern that if the disruption and uncertainty continues, that there might be a danger that EasyJet or another airline would you'll have heard this, so let's answer it once and for all. Are we in danger of them pulling out of the island?
No. So we speak to EasyJet quite a lot. The biggest thing that EasyJet get really, really frustrated with is everybody sat there saying that EasyJet are going to pull off the island. As whenever anyone says EasyJet are going to pull off the island, people book less tickets. Less tickets means they make less money, and then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. EasyJet very, very regularly, I think, talk to the media to sit there and say they have no intentions of pulling off the island. They see the Isle of Man as being a key part of their network. They understand the issues that we've got with ATC. To be fair, they see those issues pretty much across Europe. So I think recently the team actually won an award for probably the best performing outstation. I think it was in July. So EasyJet actually see us as performing pretty well. So yeah, no risk of EasyJet leaving the island, no risk of Logan Air leaving the island, no risk of Emerald leaving the island. They are all pretty content with what they are doing. The only thing that you will continue to see, as you will see pretty much everywhere else across the world, is airlines are commercial entities. They will have a look at what routes are commercially viable. If people don't fly on them or they don't get the yields that they want, they will tweak them and fly to destinations that do make more money.
Talking of destinations, Hannah, a question. Any discussions planned to have better morning connectivity to the southeast of England and generally greater reliability in the evenings? You've touched on that, but anything more you can tell us?
Yeah, and we are talking with airlines at the moment, and hopefully there will be some earlier down south routes. But we do have to remember slot restrictions are very difficult at those airports. As the gentleman mentioned before about Heathrow, we'd love to have an earlier Heathrow slot, but slots are very difficult to come by there. So yeah, and with regards to other routes, we are talking to airlines about other routes, potentials in the future of other down south routes as well.
And back to Gary, it's like ping pong this. Are we scheduled to get a new scanner at all soon for security checks?
So it wouldn't actually make a difference. So I don't know, for those that follow aviation, you'll see that the new C3 scanners have basically been pulled across Europe. So the new scanners allowed you to do liquids and electronics. Unfortunately, and that was programmed in. So we are compliant to the legislation as it was. So we have the C1 scanners, which you still have to keep your liquids and electrics in, but has been upgraded. The C3 scanners allowed you to keep everything in. Unfortunately, there has been some issues, so that even all of those airports that now have that, you have to have your liquids in 100ml bags. So again, all I would say to everybody that is flying is have a look at what the airline tells you, have a look at the airports that you are flying to and follow their instructions. But until that's been resolved, there isn't actually very much benefit to have a look at the new C3 scanners. The other issue with the C3 scanners is they won't fit in our current central search area. They are much bigger pieces of kit. So in order for us to be able to put the C3 scanners in, we would have to do some form of terminal expansion, terminal redevelopment, not necessarily changing the footprint, but changing the layout of where central search is.
Tim Johnson?
Yes, just very quickly on routes. I think the important thing to remember, I think in the past we've had a situation where often, a new route starts up and things great, and it lasts 5 minutes, and then it drops again. We don't want that happening. I think what we want to make sure is we've got sustainable routes. So it'd be great, for example, look at Bristol, where we're saying that it's a challenge to have it all year round. Wouldn't it be great if we could get it all year round? Well, let's do the work behind. That's where we'll come in, looking at the fact that it's potentially a very important visitor airport. We've got a visit strategy. We want to increase people coming to the island. So let's look at it. Let's do some work behind the scenes and see where we can build capacity so we can open new routes. But the important thing is to make them sustainable long term. We don't want this, short-termism where everyone suddenly thinks, oh, great, and the next thing it hasn't generated enough interest and it's fallen away.
Just on thank you on the buses, changing minister. Is it true the bus schedules have changed because the schedules have changed? Is that causing the shortage and why we're relying on overtime to cover the services?
No, I don't think so, because we've obviously been able to cope with it, except for the odd weekend. And I've just listened. We've got one or two drivers not in today, so we're changing those, or not. We've got one or two shortages on the drivers' routes today, so we're trying to sort that out as well. So no, it's not that at all. It's just as and when it's either sickness or people not coming in when they're due in on overtime. I think at the moment.
Thank you. One last question from the floor. I did see a hand up. Yes, gentleman in the middle and wearing the red T-shirt. Thank you.
So I have a lot of voluntary roles over here, and one of my new things is I'm going to be a student across for the next academic year. So what is the government doing to ensure that students can get back to the island affordably and flexibly? For example, if they might have lectures in the morning and then need to come back that evening. What is the government doing to make sure that with EasyJet pulling certain routes out or reducing services such as with Manchester in the upcoming year, how are they making sure that students can get back to the island?
Brian Thompson first.
The steam packet offer a student discount. So there's your answer. Come and sail instead of flying.
Minister, or Gary Cobb, just to finish off from an airline perspective or an airport perspective?
So you can do. A lot of people will focus on EasyJet, but again, we have, even just looking at, use London as an example, people sit there and say, oh, the Lake Gatwick's not got in, but the London City will. You have the Heathrow. So again, just have a look at the carrier. You might find that EasyJet might not be able to get you in, but Logan Air will. You might find that Logan Air can't get you in, but EasyJet will. We're agnostic in terms of which carrier that we look at. All of them are different products that different people want. Certain people will want an EasyJet low cost. Other people will want the consistency that Logan Air will provide. We just want to give everybody the option so that they can choose the best product for them.
And I think the last word probably should go to a rose between five thorns this lunchtime. Hannah Labeo.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I wanted to mention it in the presentation, but forgot. We do actually have 3 forums at the airport if anyone wants to join them. One is a regular passenger forum, which meets quarterly. Again, it's a really good time to talk to the regular passengers and get feedback and also explain what's going on. We also have a travel agents one, which meets quarterly, and we are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, so go to quite a few of their meetings too. So please do use those forums or any other way you'd like to communicate to us.
Thank you for your question. My word, we could have kept that going. But alas, it is lunchtime. Thank you to all of you for your questions and also your thought-provoking insights. We've touched on some of the issues, not all of them. We were never going to in the time allowing. But Stu Peters, department member, Brian Thompson, Tim Johnson, Tim Crookall, Chris Holliday, Hannah Labeo and Gary Cobb, thank you very much for your time.